Hello, everybody. It's the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Don't be a doofus. We're going to be live tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. We're going to be introducing something called Super Chat. I look forward to a way to make sure your comments are observed, and also a way to help the program out if you support the program, and we sure hope you do. That's tomorrow. Now we have Chris back with us. Chris, former Department of Defense contractor, has his own security company, has eyes and ears all around the world, taking care of different clients, and shares his expertise with us here on the show, and we always look forward to it. Although I haven't been looking forward to this episode. We're going to be talking about Rahowa, racial holy war, and it's something we have to talk about, something I haven't wanted to dig too deep into because quite frankly it frightens me, but here we go. Chris, thanks for coming back on the program.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. It's greatly appreciated.
Let's just jump right in. Rahowa.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the Rahowa. It's the racial holy war, and it actually started. There's a church called the Church of the Creator, back in, I guess, maybe 1973, and the guy's name was Ben Clausen. All right, he was a Ukrainian immigrant that, of course, he came to the United States. All right, and the whole thing about it is he kind of didn't see blacks and whites coexisting together.
Okay.
All right. So it was him that kind of said, you know what, eventually things are going to come to a head. All right. And there's going to be this racial holy war. All right. So with that, that church, I guess it's called Church of the Creator, and now it was actually later renamed the World Church of the Creator. Right now, this is a white supremacist movement that was actually which started this whole entire thing. But the whole thing about it is now they go out and they will start, like, they might go out and shoot a black person here, shoot a black person there, just to get something started, a spark, to get blacks and whites actually going at each other for this racial holy war. And as you know, most wars don't start off, big. They actually start off small, and then what they'll do is they'll start small and they'll crescendo, right, to a point of where a lot of people are involved, and not just like just a small group of people. And as you can see, Grandmaster Jay is he's the opposite side of that. You see, where blacks aren't really engaged in going out in the retribution, but with Grandmaster Jay, yeah, they're going to bring him. They have their leader now. Okay, so he's going to bring all these blacks, and eventually it's going to jump off. And that's kind of like what this racial holy war is about.
Okay, and is it predominant in is it spreading into other churches?
I'm not sure if it's spread within other churches. I know that the neo-Nazis are they're really into that. All right, I've heard the Boogaloo Boys are into that, right? But I can't really prove that, but I do know that the neo-Nazis, they're definitely into that, and I think some other white supremacist groups are as well. But that's the whole premise behind the entire thing, is to get the blacks and whites fighting together. And like I said, this has been going on since 1973, when Ben Clausen started this entire his church. It was called a pseudo religion, but he had a church and a whole bunch of followers, and it's still going on today. So that belief system, the ideology, is still going on today.
Is it a real legitimate threat that these people act and spark this? Like you said, now they have kind of an antithesis in
Right.
the NFAC. Is so. I'm assuming it's a real legitimate threat.
I mean, it is. And matter of fact, the mayor of Washington D.C. Kind of just, matter of fact, just no more than a couple of days ago, that she went on TV and was saying, leaders of this country are trying to divide the country, you know, um, instead of uniting us. And what she didn't come out and say it directly, but indirectly, she was saying that, hey, you know what, you're really leading us to a racial war, which really means it's going to be a Rahowa. I mean, she didn't come out and say it, but you have to be able to read in between the lines and know the history behind it. So everything comes together and you can understand it.
It's terrifying. The Rahowa, again, RAHOWA, short for Racial Holy War. The government in general, military intelligence branches, they're big on shortening up phrases into like one word, like Cointelpro.
Right.
Can you talk about Cointelpro for just a couple of seconds, and we'll get into a few other bits of intelligence of the intelligence branch of conflict, if you will.
Right. So COINTELPRO is short for the Counterintelligence Program. It's created by J. Edgar Hoover back in the Civil Rights era. He's one of the guys that actually created it. And the whole mission of COINTELPRO was to deter, disrupt, discredit, dismantle civil rights organizations, Black civil rights organizations. The American, you heard of AIM, American Indian Movement, was there to discredit them, to break everything up, so Blacks wouldn't actually come into power and take over certain parts of the country and possibly succeed or cede from the country. And they're basically trying to establish, of course, white dominance here in the United States. That was the whole thing. Right? They don't want one group to have more control of the other, which more or less the majority rules. Okay, and that's kind of how they see it. So they didn't want the Blacks coming out, and for certain Black groups, militant Black groups, revolutionary Black groups, like groups like that Stokely Carmichael had, H. Rap Brown. I think I talked about that earlier in one of your previous episodes.
Right.
But like H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. We talked about Elijah Muhammad, but they said he was too old. Martin Luther King, but they said Dr. King wasn't really one because he didn't believe in the violence. He was into nonviolence. So it was a liberal viewpoint, which they didn't really consider to be threatening, you see. But all the rest of them, H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, all the rest of them talked about violence. And that was the whole issue. They wanted to squash the violence and the Black Panthers, of course, they wanted to squash all that so they could maintain what we call normalcy within the United States at the time.
Okay. Is it possible that something's going on like that now against Grandmaster Jay and the NFAC? Because a lot of shows talking a lot of negativity about both their leader and the organization. Is that a possibility?
But it's not so much how they do it now. Okay, it's still going on. They just evolved it. Okay, to where before they would send in informants, right, to find out who's doing what, and then they do a lot of psychological operations, pitting this group against this group and this group against that group to have those groups fighting, right? So there's no trust. There can be no unity between those groups.
Gotcha.
Okay, and they were really concerned about Black people unifying and coming together. You see, but when you start pitting this group against this group and this group against that group, now you have everyone fighting, and there's just nothing but mad confusion. There's just confusion all over the place. So now they still do it, but not to the extent of where they'll actually create a group and they'll create a leader.
Okay.
You see?
All right.
And that's kind of like the new thing. All right. And when you create a group and create a leader, now you have all your followers. And this actually goes back to the Black identity extremist movement, or when FBI was trying to locate these individuals that had, should we say, a high propensity for violence towards law enforcement due to police brutality. And kind of Grandmaster Jay kind of fits that profile because he's the one talking about the police brutality and, we have to stand up for ourselves, take up weapons, take up guns, all this. That fits that profile to a T, you see? And that's why I believe that this is just my belief that this guy, like I said, is kind of it doesn't work for them, but he does work for them. You see what I'm saying? He's part of that. He's part of that group, to get all these blacks, the Black identity extremist people arrested and or killed. Because if we go into Rahowa, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But then also, hey, you know what? We're targeting these individuals. We'll put these people on watch list because, of their affiliation or association with NFAC.
And I've got to do the legal disclaimer. I forgot to do the opening. All comments and views of our guests are strictly theirs. They're not impaired by the show in any way, and they're not necessarily those of the show. You mentioned a term when we talked off camera. Human.
Yeah, human intelligence.
HUMINT.
Right, human.
Okay. I'm very limited in my knowledge of the intelligence community. I understand there's like signal intelligence, there's imagery intelligence,
right.
Then there's
right, the satellite intelligence, geospatial intelligence, all those. But what we really focus on right now is going to be the human intelligence. Okay. All right. And that's basically where we have sources that they're going to go back, they're going to, report and tell what they saw, see who's doing X, Y, and Z, and they're come back and say, hey, look, this is what this group is doing, this is where these people stay, that type of stuff.
Okay.
They're basically just relay information based upon what they're doing.
You're talking about based on your experience, like in Afghanistan, what they
right. Exactly.
Yeah, so clear. So because I get accused of being an agent all the time, and first of all, I'm not smart enough to be an agent for anybody, and I'm not associated with anybody. I'm in the middle. I'm like Switzerland. I try to stay neutral and listen to all sides and not be not condemn anybody or promote anybody really.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that the viewers understood we were talking about. You were talking about your experiences in Afghanistan with
right.
that. Now, that being said, is there a possibility that that the NFAC was infiltrated, if you will, by for human intelligence?
Well, possibly by another group, and it didn't have to be a governmental group. It could have been, it could have been someone that actually that has a beef or might have an issue with NFAC. All right. So I remember one of the former members of NFAC was talking, and they were basically saying, "Hey, you know what? We had 5 members. The person said we had 5 guys inside the last formation at Kentucky."
Oh, really?
Right. So, yeah, they said they had 5 people in the last formation in Kentucky. And we talk about, the human, and that's the spies going in and reporting back to their handlers what they have observed and who's doing what, whatever. So that the handler has eyes on what's going on, right? So the other issue is what we call insider threat attacks, all right? Is what we call green on blue, all right? And green on blue attacks is where the host nation force, like say for instance Afghanistan, all right, and us, the United States, are the blue, we're the blue guys, right?
You're talking
Where
like your advisors are working with a certain Afghani group.
security force, right, right. Like say for when when I was trained in like the Afghan National Police,
Right.
all right. When I trained the Afghan National Police, we would take them out on patrol. Okay, we would train them on firearms, and a lot of times you get the Taliban reaches out to their families and says, hey, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we're gonna kill you. So go back and tell your husband or your son they need to attack the Americans or else. Okay, and a lot of times, sometimes the Taliban just through recruitment will infiltrate into these security forces, right? And by doing so, the Taliban commanders and their leaders can reach out to the people and say, hey, look, this is what we want done. All right, these guys, the Americans, they're training you guys. We want you to turn on them, okay, and start shooting, the Americans, because what it does is it erodes the trust between the security forces, the government, and of course the American government, and the military or whatever governmental agency is training the national police or whatever governmental agency they're training. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we've seen that plenty of times. When I was assigned to the ODA, that was one of our primary functions was training, the Afghan National Police, the Afghan local police, and also the National Director of Security. And this one time, we had to split the ODA up because what happened, there was a insider threat attack, and some of those ODA guys were actually shot and killed in Afghanistan. So I remember our team actually had to be, split up, and we only had like a 6-man team, and they sent another 6 guys from our team over to another what we call a combat outpost, a COP, to fill in. So that other team had reinforcements to fix what what needed to be fixed, as far as making sure those insider threat attacks didn't happen again. And then that's green on blue, but then there's also green on green attacks where the Afghans will turn on their own. Okay, they've infiltrated into the police or to the military or to the intelligence service, and what they'll do is you might be there sitting having dinner or just having a meeting, and they'll just pick up the weapons and will just shoot you. There might be 5 people in the room and they'll just shoot them, right? And then they get up and they leave. That's a Taliban attack. Okay, that's the Taliban doing that, and it's letting them know, hey, you know what? We can infiltrate you. We can do whatever we want, and you have no recourse because you don't know who's doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's scary as hell.
Yeah, yeah. So that's.
So one of the Delta Django's the main person that has split from Grandmaster Jay and the NFAC, and I've said all along that I watched about 45 seconds of a video of his, and I said, this guy's a warrior. And
Yeah. He's pretty hardcore guy, and the thing about it is if that were to occur, and because I think I told you about this earlier, like Grandmaster James' security team were actually going looking for snipers in places where snipers aren't going to hide. They're going into garages, car garages, and just like snipers aren't going to hide where they're going to be found. Snipers hide where they can't be found, but that's an external threat. Your biggest threat comes from the inside, not from the outside.
Okay. Crazy. but I mean, there, it's obviously an effective modus operandi, I guess, if you will.
It's very effective. It's very effective.
Um,
It's very effective.
and it also gives me, I understand why Grandmaster Jay is so secretive and so I guess paranoid of something happening, because it's the chances are external, internal, government, non-government, just jealousy, not, I mean, powers wanting, if you don't want the black community united, um, and being a major show of power, the best thing to do would be to keep them divided. Am I wrong?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And if you can keep them divided, then there could not be any unity. That's just the bottom line, and that's how it's going to go.
Okay. All right. Chris, thank you as always for coming on the program.
Well, thank you for having me again.
And you know, we're going to have you back on. This is again, all this stuff terrifies me. I'm about peace and unity and justice and freedom, and seems like it's not the direction our country's heading, and it just scares the hell out of me, Chris.
Well, the only thing I can really tell you is, just be prepared. Get prepared for, what's going to come. And I mean, everyone should be proactive anyway. No one needs to be reactive. When you're proactive, it's letting me know that you're ready, that you're prepared for, what's in store. If you have to react to something, then you're too late. So,
Yeah,
and then you're behind the curve.
That's me. I mean, I'm not affiliated with anybody. I'm not associated with anybody. Hell, I very rarely leave my small 2-bedroom half double, except to go out and get, I'm serious. I don't have a whole lot of human contact anymore since I lost Kay.
Right.
And before we go, words of advice, what should people like me that are currently reactive, how should we be prepared? How should we be proactive?
Well, for me, I always, I have my weapons, not my ammo, of course, but I always what we call situationally aware. I think that's more important than anything else.
Okay. All right.
Is knowing, where you are, people who are around you, and just take those things into consideration. That's probably your biggest. Situation awareness is always your biggest.
Okay.
It's more so. It's not even about the guns and about the ammo. It's about your location and know where you are at all times, and just look for things that are not in the norm, that are out of the norm, that would cause you to be like, well, that's kind of not the norm. That's kind of suspicious. Maybe I need to stay away from that. Right. So just paying attention.
Yeah.
Basically, is.
And actually, one more thing popped into my head that I'd written down that I wanted to talk to you about. The Angry Viking going to Kenosha, Wisconsin on October 3rd. Is that a move that could potentially bite him in the butt, being that in the proximity of both Milwaukee and Chicago? Could he find himself outnumbered?
Oh wow. I think I discussed this the last time. If he goes and makes contact with the community leaders in Kenosha and tells them, hey, look, we're here for this. We're not here for anything else. Can we get your support? They're either going to say yes or no. If they say no, then he's pretty much done. That's it.
Right.
It's that simple. You have to have that community support for him, an outsider, to come in and do what he wants to do.
And that could be why he's choosing Kenosha, because there's a relatively small African American community there, and in comparison to other places, and
Right. Right.
and so he's going to meet less resistance there.
Right.
And once he gets in there, once it gets out that that's when he's coming, you know, I mean, he's announced pretty much when he plans on being there. Hopefully people stay away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to inflame or incite, more violence. That's just, you don't want to do that unless you do want to do that.
Well,
You know
and
what I'm saying?
yeah, and see, that's I take that and I reflect back to where we were talking about the religious holy war and how, you know, kill a black person here, kill a black person there, trying to spark things, and
Right.
and that sounds like a lot of what police have been doing.
Yeah.
And
And you know what? And the whole thing about it, I mean, I think the Bureau, FBI, come out with some sort of like bulletin saying that police have been infiltrated by like certain militia groups or certain white supremacist groups, and they might be targeting black people, or but then DOJ came out and said that's ridiculous, whatever, and it's like, okay, like which one of you two is believable? Like which one of you two is believable, DOJ or the Bureau? But they both work together, so they're contradicting what they're saying.
okay, all right, and that just confuses us even more. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the program. We'll have you back on again real soon, and always informative. It's the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Don't be a doofus. It's going to be live tomorrow night at 9. Again, we're going to have Super Chat introduced. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to be talking about the Boogaloo Boys. I'm going to be talking about the Proud Boys, QAnon, things we haven't talked about. And I'm going to be talking about BLM, Bureau of Land Management. There's a lot of white supremacist groups that are saying that Black Lives Matters have been setting the wildfires in the West because of overreactive scanners. People listening to scanners hearing BLM when it stood for Bureau of Land Management. So we'll talk about all that tomorrow night. Until then, thank you for watching always. It's a dark world. It may get even darker. Let's all try to be a light. I'm your host, Barry Walsh. It's the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus.